Hello, Internet. My name is Ace, and today I have the amazing Tim Jacobus with me. So, Tim, how's it going?
Very good. How about yourself, Ace?
Yeah, I'm doing really, really well. I'm excited to do this interview. It's we spoke earlier, and I said that just the '90s, the Goosebumps books, they were just like when I think about my childhood, there's like certain things, certain like music I think of, and uh, when I think of books and things like that, it's for good or bad, my main memory is Goosebumps. So
That's great.
yeah, although we got the terrible covers over here in England. I don't know if you knew that.
I know there was different covers in different countries. I know at some point they kind of evened out, but yeah, I know early on you guys got something different. I'm unfamiliar with them though.
Yeah, but by the time it got to like around Haunted Mask 2, I think it was your covers were kind of like coming across here, but they were like cropped real weird, and like on Haunted Mask 2, it was great when I grew older, going back and looking at the actual artwork to see, oh, there's more to this art than just, it's like really tightly cropped on the face, and it's like there's none of the background.
See, I thought, yeah, I thought that by the time that everything caught up, that you got exactly what we had over here.
Oh,
but,
no, there was
I
still...
guess somebody was stepping on it along the way.
Exactly. And now they're just replacing your covers like all over the place now with the re-releases and stuff. I'm just like, no, we need those covers
Yeah,
back.
they are slowly disappearing at this point.
Yeah, and across here as well, the book, it came from New Jersey. It's that was just, I don't think it actually got a printing over here. Maybe it did, I'm not sure. But
they did a really limited run on that. We had put out the book. It came from Ohio, which was R.L. Stine's autobiography. And after we got that done, and that one did really well, we just, actually at my ex-wife's suggestion, she said, why don't you just ask and see if they would be interested in doing a one, just a knockoff, just say it came from New Jersey. We were all kind of leery. We didn't know if it would sell much. So they, again, the Scholastic decided they would do a very low run on it. It sold okay, it sold out, but yeah, there's not a lot of them around anymore.
No, it's tough to pick up. I mean, I've got one here.
They're starting to get expensive on, as used items.
I see on the back it's like $3.99 is the retail price on it, and like now I had to get mine sent from America, and it was something like $20, $25 or something like that.
Yeah, they're getting exactly. Yeah, I've seen them brand new for even more. I don't have any copies anymore either.
No, yeah, I saw brand new, and it was like $100 like upwards.
Yeah,
that's
ridiculous.
I was like, I loved Tim Jacobus. I don't love him that much. $100 for the book.
Hell, I don't love him that much for $100.
It is you must be the first artist to ever get like a book written by the artist just solely off doing book covers, maybe.
That's a good point. You might be right because at that point, not many people even knew my name because initially, unless you could spot my signature on the cover, the Scholastic books weren't even saying that, inside on the title page that I was the artist. So the thing we did make a conscious effort on that book, if you look at it, is it's many less pages than a standard Goosebumps book.
Oh, yeah.
Because we wanted to put better paper in there so we could print cooler pictures, so that the ink would stand out and you'd get better color. So, it's a short one, and I think it's the shortest autobiography as well.
59 pages it clocks in at. But the actual reproductions of the art inside are actually pretty high quality. I was quite surprised.
Yeah, that was kind of the goal all along because, again, everybody kind of was familiar with the covers. They weren't really familiar with me, and the idea was, well, let's give them more visual stuff.
Right, so if people want to find more about the Goosebumps stuff, there's tons of that stuff online. But I wanted to talk artist to artist and get real geeky into that kind of stuff because I just love talking process. I love talking about things like that. So for the old Goosebumps books, I know you work a lot in digital now.
Yes.
But for the old Goosebumps books, like what was your process from pretty much from start to finish?
Okay, so back then, you're right. This was pre-digital. Digital was around.
God, what
but
was that like? What was that like?
I had gone to school for traditional art, so I didn't know any better. So traditional was all there was. The process at the beginning was pretty easy. R.L. Stine was writing the books at the same time I was doing the cover.
He was like ripping out like one a month or something crazy like
that.
Oh
yeah, the dude cranks it out. I mean, he writes like a chapter every day before lunch. I mean, it was amazing because he was doing multiple series at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So he would, and the way he worked was he had to come up with the title of the book first. This is something I just found out in recent years, that he couldn't move forward until he had the title settled in his head. Once he had the title, then he can just go like a madman.
Right.
So I would get anything from 1 page to 1 paragraph to 2 sentences, just describing what the book was about. And generally, he writes vivid enough that was plenty to get going with.
Mm-hmm.
So the next step would be I would do thumbnail sketches, little, 2-inch by 3-inch. It's the equivalent of jotting down notes if you're getting ready to write something. I just was putting down rough ideas, and I try to fill up a couple of pages of those, because what ended up happening is after a while the good ideas kept kind of repeating themselves in some fashion in there.
I mean, I still thumbnail every piece of work that I work on. I've just got into that habit of you can tell even when you look at the thumbnails, like the first drawing you do is very rarely the best one. It's very rarely the best idea.
Absolutely, because there really is an evolution, and if you get too granular too early, you go, okay, well, I think, let's say, you're drawing a werewolf, and you start out with too much detail. You start working on eyes and teeth. Now you've completely missed the boat. You're getting past the main idea and getting into the details. So that idea of keeping them tiny and loose and fast is the real key at the beginning.
That's one good thing about your book as well. There is actually a collection of your thumbnails for one of the illustrations, if I remember rightly. The the crazy school teacher one.
Oh, right.
Yeah, there's like I think they're more refined thumbnails, actually. I think they're more the ones that you sent to me. Yeah, because that's the
next step. What I would do then is pick out 2 or 3 ideas that seem to gel, and I would draw them with pencil, no bigger than 8-inch by 8-inch. They had to fit on an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper back then, because I was using a fax to send them in. There, again, no digital.
It's a history show, this is.
Yeah, I'm becoming a dinosaur here. So they had to fit on a piece of paper, and they had to print clearly. So I would do the pencil sketches, and they would have some there'd be shading in there. They were somewhat tight, but they weren't overly tight. I would submit them in, and the art directors would just talk about it, and then generally they would pick one. Once in a while, they would look for a combination. Say, we like the house in this one and the monster in this one. Can we put those 2 together? But for the most part, I got free reign. So almost every time I turned something in, it would just come back and it would be, okay, let's go with number 2. And
that's great. That's forward. Like an illustrator's dream right there.
Oh, I'm telling you, because I had been doing book covers for years before Goosebumps started. And that was never, ever, ever the process. It was always, multiple steps and multiple people weighing in. And so, yeah, when this came along, it was amazing from that aspect. So now they've picked a sketch. And what I would do is I would take that sketch and I would either leave it the same size, or I would put it on a copier and reduce it down so that it was, maybe 4 inches by 4 inches, 6 inches by 6 inches. And I would glue that copy to a piece of illustration board. And then what I would do, again, this falls back into that same idea of the thumbnail sketches, is now I've had something very small, and I would do all my color comps on those. So what I was trying to do is just work out color combinations before I went ahead and painted the final painting. This way, it's small, you could keep painting over things, and you didn't get bogged down with detail. Just kind of slapping the paint into place until you got that right combination. And, you've looked at enough Goosebumps covers where I was pulling out all the stops with colors.
Oh, yeah. It was like, there's so many cool, like, warm versus cool and stuff like that. And, like, just the most vibrant pinks, like, you can possibly imagine, things like that.
And that was the goal, that every time that you got into a shadow area where normally you would darken it up and go to black or go to gray, I'm going to purple and to blue. And so those combinations, some work and some do not work. So I would try to get that all settled on these little tiny paintings beforehand. And it would probably fall into place in a couple of hours.
So I'm guessing with your colours and stuff, whilst we're just talking about them, was you surely you was going like straight out the tube with certain colours, because like mixing like that vibrant of colours, like pretty impossible.
Oh yeah, those were the phthalo green, yellow greens were right out of the tube, and that's a color that I miss because it doesn't come through in digital as well. If sadly I don't. The original paintings are somewhere in a warehouse in at
such a shame. It's such a shame.
Yeah, but if you would see them, there are certain colors that really, really pop on the original, and they did a great job doing reproductions on the covers. But these are colors that I can't use as often now that I've gone digital because they're a little flat, they get a little bit muddy, and they just don't quite work as well.
Yeah.
So when we would now at this stage, I have my small color comp, I have my sketch, and I'm kind of ready to go. I wouldn't take the time to redraw the sketch in the same fashion that I reduced it down on a copier. I would blow up that original sketch using a standard Xerox. And my final paintings for Goosebumps were 20 inches by 20 inches. And I painted on a number 80 illustration board.
So we're talking like cold press.
Cold press, right. A little bit of tooth to it. I didn't like the plate finish because when you would put paint on with a brush, if you went back and touched it, it would pull it back off again. Where that cold press, slight tooth to the surface really like grabbed the paint and pulled it off the brush and really got it to settle down. I painted with acrylic paint because my hands. I actually my whole life I don't have a real steady hand, and when I work, I like to work with my hand down on top of the art.
Oh yeah, I'm exactly the same way.
I'm
like
good. Yeah,
if I try and hover, it's like
about.
it's all these crazy lines.
That's way too hard.
Yeah.
So I would I'd lay paint down, and I would have a hairdryer sitting next to my desk so that I could speed the drying time up, so I could keep putting my hand back down on the surface and continue to work. Mm-hmm. I used airbrush along with traditional sable brushes. Now, airbrush is, for anybody who doesn't know, it's controlled spray painting. It looks, the unit itself kind of looks like a pen, a little bit fatter, has a hose attached to the bottom, and you're sending compressed air through this tool.
So basically for hours upon end, you're just hearing...
Well, early on, yes, that's exactly what happens because you can only afford a cheap compressor.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Cheap compressors make a lot of noise. As things move on and you get a little bit more successful, they made some what they called whisper jet compressors.
Yeah, they run like super expensive though. Some of them. Like...
Yeah, compared to I think my first compressor I got from somebody for $25. So.
So that was really cranking out the volume.
So yeah, it's that combination of brush and airbrush. The airbrush is obviously gives you that nice blended soft stuff, and the sable traditional brush gives you the hard edges. So hard edges versus soft edges gives you a lot of texture, and it also helps you develop depth in your art.
So was you mainly doing the backgrounds with airbrush and things like that? I've had some like Frisky or like masking fluid, something like that, and then painting over the top of that, if you get what I mean.
Yeah, exactly. And I actually did it. The way I approached it was painting in layers. So I'd start with the whiteboard, and then I'd paint the whole board a blue. And then I would use a transfer paper, and I would transfer a little bit more of the illustration onto the board, and I would paint that. Then I would transfer some more, and I would paint that. And I always worked from background to foreground, saving all the best cool shit for last, so that I didn't get bored along the way. Not that I had time to get bored, but I always liked that approach because I had way more control over the depth of the painting as well. So you could get that, and then I would know that I'm saving all my lightest lights, darkest darks for that foreground image that I really want to have pop off the background.
So was there I take it there was no like underpaintings going on, things like that? No,
there wasn't. No glazes, no translucents. I mean, certain things will happen a little bit using the airbrush just because the way that goes down, but I never planned it that way where I was purposely laying a red down and then putting a blue over top and hoping for a very cool purple. That's just not the way it worked. It was very poster like in my approach. I had my color comp, so I knew what colors I wanted.
Yeah. Oh yeah, of course. Yeah. Right. So have you got any tips for like artists that maybe have grown up nowadays before all that old technology that you was talking about?
Well, I think that's the really important thing here, because here's what I've noticed. Now, I work with a bunch of people now who are of the next generation who didn't do any artwork traditionally in their life. Everything they've done is digital. And I work with some really skilled designers who cannot draw.
Yeah,
and
it's crazy.
Going back a few years ago, that would be impossible. That never would happen. So I think it's opened the field so that there's more people in it, and so these people can exist and be successful in the business. But I think that ability to go back and hit those traditional skills, go back and pick up a pencil and do some drawing, do some painting. If you have an ability to draw today, that's what pushes you ahead of all these people, because every once in a while, no matter how cool or how unbelievably amazing those programs are, you're gonna need to draw something somewhere.
Yeah, that's it. To me, just solid foundations. Like even going back at the old what's it called? The old like the old animation books where it teaches you from like construction from just basic circles and things like that.
Yeah.
And just learning about turning things in 3D space. All things like perspective. Like to me, I absolutely adore perspective. It's just a thing that I never get tired of like studying, because it's just, there's so many cool things you can do with perspective. I mean, if you look at like the curvilinear stuff, your stuff, especially from like maybe a third of the way in for the books, like just that curvilinear perspective was just something that you associate with Goosebumps.
Yeah, that was obviously that was very conscious. That early on, you would have things that were interesting, but you wanted it to be more interesting. And as soon as we started warping the perspective and started to do the tile floors and the tile ceiling, so you could really...
there's a tile on every book. There's the checkerboard pattern.
Exactly, because that would really play up that whole warped scenario. And again, and like you say, you have to be able to know real perspective before you can start to do that warped perspective and do
definitely.
It effectively and efficiently.
Yeah. So let's say a digital artist wanted to kind of flip the things a little bit and wanted to trade pixels for pigment and like start their first like traditional pieces without the help of all multiplier layers and endless tools and warps and all things like that. What would be your kind of starting point for someone who, like I say, who's never picked up acrylics
here's
before?
A good one, and here's something that I still use all the time, even though I'm doing something digital. Try and start your original sketch in pencil and do it outside traditionally on a piece of paper, and don't get hung up on it. You don't even have to get it that far, but just start out with something that's natural. Then scan that thing in. Now start working on it so that you've started with something that's organic before it goes in. It's a really easy first step. Almost anybody can do it, and then build up from there. That's how I move all my stuff now. Where start out as a quick sketch. Don't get hung up on shading or any of that stuff. Dump it into the computer, clean up the edges, and then I start to shade using the digital tools, and then I submit my sketch from there.
So someone who's like I say, they've got the fundamentals down, say digitally, but what if they wanted to say do an acrylic piece for the first time? Like, how does that translate?
Okay. Yeah. Start out small. Don't commit yourself to a
mural, huge
8 foot by 4 foot monster, because it's gonna kill you. So yeah, get yourself a small canvas, a small piece of illustration board. Acrylic paints are nice because you don't have to buy full sets. You buy a couple of colors. Actually, what I would suggest, and it's something that I have become almost addicted to right now, is just working in black and white. Get some acrylic white, and that white and black are so inexpensive. I think you can get like a gallon of each for $4. So and that will give you the basis for what you're doing. You don't get hung up on colors and mixing and I'm having a hard time. It's black and white. You can sculpt, for lack of a better term, you can sculpt a good painting using simple black and white acrylics.
Drawing fundamentals is number one for me, and then number two is value, because I think you can pretty much get away with any color scheme as long as the values are correct. It's going to work somewhat, obviously.
You're dead on there. All the color in the world is not going to save an illustration or a painting that has poor values and poor contrast. So if you can get it to work in black and white, you're right. Anything you put in there, any Goosebumps combination will work properly if your values
you proved that.
correct.
You proved that in the 90s. Just slap anything, don't worry about saturation. The more the better, and it worked because the values were correct. And is there any brands of acrylic paints that you have lived by through all this time?
No, there are some that are a little more expensive that are a little bit better. Even the most inexpensive Liquitex acrylics are perfectly good. I use them on Goosebumps paintings. I don't know if there's a long-term loss of color. If we took a look at one of those Goosebumps paintings that was 25 years old and compared it to something that was done today, would there be, color loss? That I can't tell. I have paintings that are old. Most of them are under glass, so I haven't noticed anything. So I think you're fine with your baseline. As long as it's kind of a brand name. I wouldn't go with the
Walmart kind of bumper.
Right, yeah. Exactly. That's what I was just going to say. Don't go for any bargain style, because again, some colors are a little pricey. Your cadmiums and stuff start to creep up in color, in price.
Nowhere near as bad as oils, though. I mean,
exactly.
What about working digitally? The way that I work is I do a value painting first. I'll work in black and white, or I'll do it monochromatics. I'll work in some color because I get bored of staring at black and white all day, and I'll just work in different values of a certain color, and then go over the top with color layers and things like that, and then paint opaquely on top of that digitally to obviously fix things, and obviously when colors added, things change. And so is that your process working digitally, or do you just go straight in with color? Or
No, I do exactly what you do. See, that what's beautiful about the digital thing is, okay, so I start my sketch outside, I put my sketch in. Then I take layers in Photoshop and I reduce the opacity down to, anywhere from 30 to 50%. And then I take out black and I start laying my values over top of that. Then I can put more layers over top, and then there's a transparent effect to it. So where 230% cross, I get a 60, and I start to build my sketch out like that. And it's beautiful digital. You can erase, which when you're painting, there is no erase. And so then when my sketch is done, it's got a nice set of values already built into it. Once the client okays it, I'm painting right over top of it, just like you. That it's because it's all right there. And again, you just start blocking in, getting a feel for the colors and how you like them. Again, the beauty is, a Goosebumps painting, I could spend a whole day painting the background leaves in blues and greens, and when I get done, I go, oh, you know what? They should have been purple, and I could spend the whole next day painting them purple. Where digital world, you just start to play with the slider, and you got your purple leaves.
It is just insane how especially for me, the biggest thing to get my head around the pre-digital age is not the tools, it's not anything like that, because I still love working traditionally. The thing is reference. Just reference is there. It's so easy to be like, what does a lion look like from 3/4 behind, from slightly, and you've got that in 30 seconds. Whereas I imagine in the 90s you just had piles of encyclopedias, and you're like, well, that angle's gonna have to do.
I'm telling you, it's so funny. I just thought of this the other day, because what we used to do is you used to keep a massive set of files in a filing cabinet, and you would have a file on horses. And you also subscribed to as many magazines as you could afford. So the magazines would come in, you'd read them, and then you'd take out your razor blade and you would just start cutting them up, and then you would take that pile of pictures and sort them into folders. So yeah, that was my Google. It was a drawer full of just random photos. National Geographic was just a place where you always grab stuff because they were such fabulous photos. But yeah, I gotta tell you today, it's so nice. And I would spend full days in the library.
I can imagine. Say if now I wanted to do a noir painting, a 40s noir sort of painting, I'm like, what's the clothing like? What kind of stuff were they wearing in the 40s and things like that? And it's just literally 3 seconds, and you've just got pages and pages and pages of images, and you're like, okay, that's what they wore in the 40s. But God, I can't imagine being noir stylized clothing. Where's that in the library? Which aisle's that down?
Exactly. But that's also something I miss. I mean, you get a little of it. You're like you say, you're looking for a specific image, and you're directed right there, and you'll find it. But the thing about the library is, you would go there, and at the library I went to, it was a big county library, very big, and all the bigger photograph-based books were on the bottom shelves, because they couldn't fit them on the top shelf. So I would just wander through and just be grabbing books haphazardly. I am looking for something, but I ended up finding other things and researching other things. So, you had to stay focused, but I also found a lot of really interesting things every single time I went there, where sure, I've discovered some cool things doing searches on the internet where I was looking for A and I end over at Z. And
yeah, but in that transition, you end up just naturally on Google Images, you're like, right, I'm looking for a lion. And you go lion. Then random porn comes up, and you're like, what? But no, I don't want porn. Scroll past that, and then you end up, like you say, you end up in some world of another, and you're like, okay, this is cool.
Well, I think I got better from that. I don't know.
But as well, it's it has made people a lot lazier, I think, with their ability to draw and things like that. Because to me, I mean, you can always tell when someone's traced an image, and it doesn't look right to me. I'm a big believer of pushing things, caricature everything. Something quite often looks more like something if you caricature it, and you're pushing the things which you think of when you think of a lion. You think of the big teeth and the mouth and stuff like that, and you can push that more, and you can turn the eyes down a bit and up the mane and things like that, and you're just amplifying those things. Whereas because just reference is so easy, you can just be drag it into Photoshop and then start painting over the top of it. It's that's not the point. That you need to push things and like really mold them until they look like just something that couldn't exist in reality unless you're going for that reality thing. But I think with illustration stuff like that, I think that side has been lost a little bit, and you get a lot of like, you lose a lot of energy, I think, when people are tracing things, and like things just look a little dead. Whereas like if you're drawing, especially if you're starting super loose and stuff like that, and you're just pushing things and like you're just pushing the gesture and things like that, it looks so much better to me.
Absolutely. Again, even back in the day, when it was traditional, you could even tell when someone opened the book and then took a piece of tracing paper and traced off of that, then transferred it to their drawing, and then, but there was still, you got a little bit, there was still an art transfer there, slightly artistic. Like you say now, you can spot it a million miles away when somebody just scans in a photo and it's in there because there's something happening in that photo, whether it's a perspective thing or a foreshadowing or something, and it's because of the photo's limitation, you're going, yeah, but you should have been able to spot that and draw past that and fix that. So, yeah, of course, you've seen, my Goosebumps stuff. I have some stuff that's a little bit more realistic, but I do exactly what you're talking about. You exaggerate your point, whatever you're trying to do. If you're trying to make it frightening, then you make dramatic all those things that are frightening. If you're trying to make it peaceful, you try to, play up those things so that they're more dominant. And it's more enjoyable to you. You're the guy who's creating. It's more enjoyable to you if you're letting this thing evolve on its own. You're going from nothing. There's, it's rare in this world where you can start with nothing and you can create something through your own abilities and show somebody else.
Yeah, it's the best thing in the world. It's creating music, it's creating art, it's these things that, like, even as like cavemen, it was like pre-programmed into us, like dance and like music and chanting and art and things like that. It's within us, and it's like, it's such a shame that a lot of I don't know if it's changed now, but when I was at school, like a lot of that was like set aside, and it was like discouraged in a way, when like nowadays it should be, or all along it should be just encouraged, because it's, like I say, it's within like us as like a heritage of like being humans and things like that. It's like, it's just part of us.
Yeah, we are hardwired to it, and you're right. Even here in the U.S., when budgets get tight, the first thing they do is cut the art program
straight away.
The one thing we do that we have ability as artists. I have a couple of friends who are writers, and so they slave over what they do, and then they either have a short story or a novel, and they then try to go, hey, check out this new thing that I did. And that's a commitment on your audience's part. And, you could spend a week on some of that stuff, where as an artist, it's the shortest sense of satisfaction, and it's the easiest to your viewer. It's like, hey, look at this. And in 5 seconds, they've done everything that they need to do. They've looked at it, they've scanned it around, and they've made, you've given them some sort of emotion. And, even with music, it takes the length of a song, or, dance, it takes, an episode or worth of movement before you get a feel. Art is instant. It takes you forever. It may take you a week's worth of time, and it only takes them 5 seconds. But as an artist, you can see on their face as well, you're getting instant feedback on whether you got something working, or you got something that's just mediocre.
And it's so worth it as well, especially if you spent, like you say, like 50, 60 hours on an illustration, things like that, and just seeing that connect, or even if just one person online shares that work, it's connected with that person in some way, and I don't know. It's a sort of selfish endeavor in a way, because you want to. You plus we're like the most. I think all art, when you're talking about music and everything like that, we need the like appreciation of others to fuel us in some sort of sense. You know what I mean? We're creating this, and we don't want people to go, no, yes, it's all right. It's not new. We want people to like engage with these things, and it's sad in a way that we need that like external like confirmation that we're good, we're getting better. But it's the sad truth that people probably don't admit as much. But we do need that sort of like gratification like from others.
Sure, you're not spending 50, 60 hours and then taking that and putting it in a box and hiding it under your bed.
Exactly.
That's not where. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you get this. There is a huge satisfaction while you're creating something.
Oh yeah.
My enthusiasm happens somewhere 2/3 to 3/4 of the way through.
Yeah.
I've done all the effort and I see it really paying off. You know, I've accomplished almost everything I need to do. That last quarter, I'm just finishing it.
Yeah, I mean the first half, no paintings ever look good.
The first half, that's real work.
You start questioning yourself as well. Like you're like, oh, is this really going in the direction I want it to go in, and stuff like that. And then when you start adding that details and finishing things up, and that's when it really comes together. And it's exciting for you as a creator as well, as much as it is for someone coming and seeing this image for like the first time. You sort of see it for the first time, like once you get into that like third quadrant of like creating. It is exciting. Yeah, and
thank goodness, knock on wood, that's never gone away. I still am. There's still a thrill. Every once in a while when something goes slightly different or turns out a little bit better than I anticipated. It still really works for me, and I get equally as disappointed when it doesn't pan out.
Yeah.
I haven't become jaded, and it hasn't become just mundane, or it hasn't just become just an effort or a job. There's still joy in that.
I think it's because as well, you can't be the best. Like no matter how much you study and like you're trying to improve, you cannot know everything and you cannot be the best. And like say if you're working a job where like you can get jaded and stuff with stuff because it's repetition, but with art it is different every time and there's always something new to learn. And it is an unattainable goal that we're all trying to achieve, to be perfect, because that's what's in our heads and we're never going to get there. But that is so exciting to me that like you'll walk past somewhere and you'll see a tree that you've never seen this like a certain way before, and you're like, right, I need to capture that, and things like that. And it's awesome. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's really great when you the idea or the vision that you had comes together. What I find is even more enjoyable is the things that just happen by themselves. That's, I wanted this to happen, and, for the most part it did, but there's things that happen along the way, and then you start to play off of that, and you come up with something even better than what you initially imagined. Yeah. That's magic.
Right, so a couple last really quick questions. So are you using like a Cintiq when you're working digitally? Or are you working on like a tablet, like a...
You work on a tablet. Yeah, I have
really? My brain can't work like that. I've tried.
See, again, that's all I knew. Like when they gave me my first computer and said, "Here's a mouse," I wanted to hang myself.
Yeah.
It was awful. And then when they were like, "Well, there's this pad, and you hold the pen and you move your hand like you normally do," I was like, "All right." My brain can associate that. So I've been doing that since I started, and it was around 1999, 2000 was when I
Oh, so it was like pretty early to the front.
Yeah, but I wasn't... I got it, and I was trying to learn it then. I didn't actually use it professionally probably for maybe 2 or 3 years. And then at some point... the business actually kind of made me do it. They all just said, "Yeah, listen, we don't want any more traditional art. We want digital. So ramp it up." And by then, I had enough raw skill to make the transition. That was probably my biggest fear, was that the quote unquote new stuff wouldn't have the same feel or wouldn't look like my old stuff. And I labored really hard to make sure that if you look at what I've done, like the artwork that I did for the Goosebumps movie compared to an old Goosebumps, you should be able to put them side by side and go, oh yeah, that's Tim's stuff, and it still holds up.
What I was super excited about with the movie actually was that ending credits sequence because they've started changing the book covers and things like that. And they've like got new artists in and stuff like that. I was like, is like Tim gonna be like featured in any way or anything like that? And then when I first saw Slappy, I was like, okay, this is not Tim's Slappy, but the same way that the TV show was nothing like Tim Slappy as well. And then I was like, okay. And then when it got to the credits, I was like, that the credits was the best part of the movie for me.
So here's how it worked with the movie. R.L. Stine told me years before that, it was going down. And then they shot all the principal photography. And then the final year they were doing all the digital work. And, no one reached out to me. And as far as I knew, again, I was going to be just like everybody else. My first exposure was going to be in the theater to see it. And it got close to, they released in, it was like Halloween time. Yeah. And in that August, I got a call from some guys, and they're like, look, we want to talk to you about something. You got to sign papers before we can talk. And there was no way I thought it was the Goosebumps movie because as far as I knew, it was done and they were just doing promotions for it. And this was the company that was doing the credits.
So literally like 2 months before the release of the movie.
Yeah, it was the end of August, literally. Yeah, and that was the whole deal was we're out of time. Here's what we're trying to do. The end of the movie happens, and we have Jack Black. He turns to the camera and screams, and then he morphs into a book cover. And we hate the book cover that we're drawing. And we just saw an article about you, so we reached out, and we want you to recreate a Goosebumps cover with Jack Black's face on it. Yeah. And yeah, like you said, yeah, same with me. I was like, oh, this is yeah, I'm pretty sure I can do that. So I turned around. We needed to turn around the artwork in just a few days. They told me what they wanted. I worked over the weekend. We turned it in. They were, very happy. No bumps along the way.
Yeah, and then there was obviously that ending sequence.
Well, here's that was the part. The whole time they kept going, yeah, listen, we're not telling you anything. You just wait till you see.
Oh,
that's
really?
all they
That's
kept
even
saying.
better.
They just said, hey, wait till you see. Wait till you see. We're going to do something cool. Wait till you see. And I'm going, okay,
Yeah,
sure. Yeah, sure. So, again, no one told me anything until I actually saw the ending in the theater.
Oh, really? That's insane.
Yeah. So again, it was the same thing that you did, where I just was like, oh, hey, cool, good. They're putting up some pictures of the old stuff. And soon as the illustrations moved, I was just like, holy crap! I can't believe it. This is great.
That's awesome. Have you got like a favorite cover? I mean, it probably changes, and it's difficult to rate stuff you did like 20 years ago.
Yeah, they change it. It's funny then, like I don't see them all the time, and every once in a while a new one will pop up that's not part of the usual fare, and I go, oh yeah, that one's cool. I like that one. I mean, I liked Eggs Monsters from Mars.
Yeah.
I like the distortion that what we talked about earlier with the perspective. That Hair Day is one that you don't see all that often. And then I liked one of the later Slappies. I think it was Night of the Living Dummy 3, where
is that the one with the family?
The family of dummies in the attic.
Yeah, that's super cool. Yeah, I love that one.
So yeah, those are just a couple.
I'm a big fan of the I can't remember what it's called. It was one of the Choose Your Own Goosebumps. I think it was the one with the crocodile.
Oh, no kidding. Yeah, that was the only Choose Your Own Adventure cover that I did.
Yeah, I love that one. I absolutely love that. The color temperature and stuff in that is like, it's awesome. Yeah, no, it's awesome. Right, so last question then. Have you got any like books or courses or anything that you'd recommend to anyone listening?
Yeah, there's an artist out there. His name is Roger Dean.
Oh yeah, the guy who did the
exactly.
Yes Cups, yeah.
Take a look at the stuff that he's done. He had a huge influence on me. He did lots of album covers, not just for Yes. That's where he was best known. But he did a whole bunch of other stuff. And
that makes sense, like, because his stuff was like super vibrant and saturated as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. But his whole incredible landscapes, and it was surreal, but it was real. I just, it's stuff that still doesn't grow old for me. And again, he's an older guy, and people don't get albums anymore, and it's kind of getting lost. But it's still out there, and
he played a lot with complementary colors as well, like really like shocking, like complementary colors.
Exactly, yeah, he did. Tons of, like you say, that the warm side was always red or orange, and the shadow side was always that deep dark reds and blues and purples. That's just something that once you start looking at, and he's got hundreds of paintings. So yeah, and I think, I think he's London-based, or he's England-based, where we don't see his stuff in real life here very often. So
we need a show with your old stuff. You need to get onto Schoolism and
that would
put a show
be,
together.
Like I said, that I haven't seen the paintings since I painted them. I would paint them, turn them in, and I've never seen them since.
That's crazy.
They moved just recently. They moved Scholastic Publishing from the building they were in to a new location, and someone that I know who actually works in Canada happened to be in New York, and said that they saw the artwork. Now that's the only physical confirmation that I have that they still exist, because there was a rumor for a while that when Hurricane Sandy came through and Lower Manhattan flooded, a rumor was that my artwork and a whole bunch of other artwork were in a warehouse and they were destroyed.
Oh god!
And
so but surely will they have gone from the original paintings for the credits of the movie?
They would just use they use what was called transparencies. They would take photographic shots of the art, and you would get this giant 8x10 transparency, or remember what slides used to look like? It was all positive, and you could see the colors through them, but they would do all the reproductions off of that. That was the standard mode. So those get passed around, and they can dupe them, but no, the original art just sits somewhere. And
right. So Tim, thanks so much.
Yeah,
it's been a blast. It's been I've loved getting super nerdy and super geeky and stuff like that. Like even like what type of paper and paints and stuff like that. It's super fun, and especially with someone who definitely got me more aware of art, because like when you're 10 or something like that and you're reading Goosebumps and things like that, you're not really aware of art at that age. You like to draw, you like to paint and things like that, but it was definitely those covers when they got away from the terrible few that we first got that were yours. It was definitely them, and it became like a collection for me. At the time the stories were good, and you couldn't see these terrible twists that I'm sure he just reached into a bag of like random twists, and he'd like pull one out and he's like, okay, your brother was a frog all along, and this kind of thing. But the art, still to this day, I still look at it for inspiration. This past week I did a super quick painting for my YouTube channel of just slappy sort of fan art and things like that, and it was just, like I say, it's still stuck with me 26 years later or something like that, and it's like I say, it's been super just a pleasure to actually speak to you and get into the weeds with the nitty-gritty and stuff like that.
I appreciate it greatly, and please know that it's not lost on me, the fact that here you are this many years later, and you still look back and still can find, enjoyment in those pieces is just, it's what gets me through the day.
I have a Pinterest board with just full of your old Goosebumps covers that I flick through. Yeah. Right. So thanks a bunch for that, Tim.
You bet, Ace.
If you want to support me and in turn grab some awesome goodies for yourself, such as early and extra videos and Google Hangouts with me from as little as $1 a month, head on over to patreon.com/AceConnell. I'll see you there.